Well, something caught my eye on X recently that I thought was very clever. Kenelm Tonkin, the president of the Christian Libertarian Institute, tweeted a poll asking people which of the following is a human right: housing, medical care, food, or none of the above. So housing, medical care, food, or none of the above. Interesting food for thought. Before we show you the results, I've invited Kenelm Tonkin onto the show to tell us why he decided to run this poll and what it all means. Kenelm, thanks very much for joining us. Good to have you here.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure.
Tell us a little bit about why you decided to ask that question. It's a bit of a provocative question in and of itself, isn't it?
Well, there's a lot of commentary going on social media at the moment, and a whole range of issues, as you know. And it just seemed to me there was cloudy thinking around what rights are. A lot of people talk about rights, but I thought to myself, why don't we just test this by asking that question and just see, what people know and what they don't.
So classical libertarian theory, Kenelm, how do you define a right, and do these things fall into the category of rights?
Yeah, so I mean, this is an ancient discussion. This is nothing new. If you think of a right as something that's inherent in terms of being human, it's part of being human, what it is to be human. And we're owed certain rights, in the dignity of being human. And this is, or God-given rights, if you like. And this is quite different from entitlements that are given by humans, by people, by government. I think John Locke, who is the philosophical father of classical liberalism, he put it best when he said, rights come from God, not from government.
Right.
Yeah. So anything that has a financial resources aspect to it, this really falls into the realm of, social programs, not inherent human rights. I've got a quote actually from George Bush Sr., who puts a finer edge on it. And he said, there's a difference between rights and entitlements. You have a right to liberty, but you're not entitled to financial resources of other people.
Right.
And,
okay.
So when I'm looking on X, for instance, and I'm seeing all sorts of commentary as to what rights are, and it's really foggy thinking, Damian.
Okay, but when we think about rights, we think about housing, medical care and food. Obviously, in a nice culture and a nice society, it would be nice to think that we could provide all of that for everybody. And that's usually where socialism starts. It starts with these sorts of basic things that we all would kind of agree should be relatively available. And then it sort of grows from there, unfortunately. But just explain to us why it's important to understand that even housing, even medical care, even food are not technically rights.
Yeah, because they require financial resources. So those financial resources come from other people. No one has a right to your financial resources. It's nice if you can get it, according to socialists, but it's a slippery slope. What is one person's food today can become, luxury mansions, by a dictator in another country. We don't want that. We want sharp thinking that goes to our inherent rights that don't cost money, but they are owed to us by the dignity of being human. They're God endowed, if I can put it that way, in the John Locke manner.
Let's have a look at how the results went on
lots of foggy thinking, and of course the way the poll is designed is really to test that.
Yeah, so let's have a look at the results. Now we got housing came in at 5.9%, medical care at 7.4%, food at 18.3%, and none of the above at a whopping 68.4% out of about 1,200 votes. Now, obviously, your audience on Twitter X is libertarian leaning, Kenelm. So that result, even though it does represent a big sample, isn't exactly random. But with a leftist audience, we might see the none of the above nearly zero. But it does indicate, I guess, that there is a bit of an understanding out there emerging a little bit, right? That there is a difference between this idea of what is a right and what is an entitlement.
It's true. I do have a strong classical liberal libertarian following. This is true. And that's why I sent this poll out to Ozpoll and Ozpoll 2024. And, in the commentary that came from it, which amounted to hundreds of ancillary conversations, a lot of the people who had cloudy thinking actually, were centre-right. And I just think it's important that we on the centre-right are very clear on Western freedoms and Western rights. I'm sort of gratified that sort of 68% understood this clearly, but the way the poll was structured, there was a trick in there, wasn't there, to determine whether they knew that. And so we need to just reinforce this point, what rights are.
It's a hard one to sell, though, isn't it? Because people do err on this idea of, being kind and being generous and sharing things around. But all we're saying here, or all you're saying, is that it's an understanding of the difference, understanding the difference between what you're entitled to as a God-given right and what entitlements you have been bestowed by your community, if you like, if not the government. Your community has agreed to help and assist you to housing, to food, and to medical care, and that we should never take that for granted.
Yeah, it's not an entitlement, because you are taking the funding for social programs is taken from other people. What right do you have to take money from other people? And if we maintain a sharp classical liberal approach and we're clear where we stand, then we don't get this slippery slope of, like NDIS. The budget for this on compassionate grounds is enormous. It's more than Medicare. It's more than defence combined. We can't survive as a civilization, as a country, if we keep doing this. We have to get back to our basic classical liberal principles. Look, these are all enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It's not as if this is unknown, and we can just keep talking about them. The right of assembly, habeas corpus, right to association, freedom to move, freedom not to be harmed or tortured, on and on. And COVID brought out all the abuses of our human rights. And guess what? They're doing it again with the E-Safety Commission.
Yeah. So we're seeing that the actual human rights are being taken away. In the meantime, we've got other things being defined as human rights that actually are not, but are obviously nice to haves for a civil society. Kenelm, interestingly, you did this in America just to show the difference between the mindsets. So we had a colleague do it in America as well, and it was 92% that said none of the above. So a much higher figure, which I suppose illustrates that deeper understanding in the United States of liberty.
They're 100% clear. And as these polls, as there was cross-pollination in commentary between those who responded with the US poll and the Australian poll, what I discovered is that Americans who responded to the US poll were teaching Australians what rights are. I mean, It's extraordinary. When you think about how far Australia has drifted in this regard, one of the key authors of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was H.V. Evatt, the Labor man in the Menzies period. And yet now even people on the centre-right who are sort of drifting don't know the differences. So we need to educate. We need to get back to an education system which relays these values.
Yeah, we are a long way from a good classical education system, that's for sure. You had a history with the Liberal Party as well yourself at fairly senior levels in the day, I understand, and you have seen that party shift a little bit. Does that concern you as well?
I joined the Liberal Party. There was a letter published by Russell Broadbent recently, a long-time Liberal MP. He became an MP in 1993, first up. And it was an internal letter to Peter Dutton imploring him not to go down this E-Safety Commission path and the digital ID path, implored Peter Dutton not to do it. And in standing up for those old-fashioned classical liberal values, 5 months later, he lost his pre-selection. I joined at a time Russell Broadbent first came into the party, and these classical liberal values were the very essence and DNA of the Liberal Party. And I left the Liberal Party and joined the Libertarians because the Liberal Party no longer stands for those values. And the Libertarians clearly do. They clearly understand what Australia has lost with the Liberal Party.
Yeah. All right. Kenelm, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us.
Just one thing, Damian,
yes,
just before you go.
Absolutely.
In the time it's taken us to have this interview, Australian government debt has increased $228,000.
Wow.
Let that one sink into your readers. All right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We are out of control on the debt. There's no question about that. It's getting more and more frightening as the days go by. Kenelm Tonkin, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Did you like that content? If you did, there's a lot more where that came from. It comes from a show called The Other Side, and it drops every Friday at 8 p.m. on Australia's ADH.TV, which you can watch for free on any browser. Or you can watch us right here on YouTube. Just remember to please support us by subscribing. Punch that subscribe button and the little bell next to it. Do it now, please.